So today's video we're looking at the story of how the first chess game was ever played in space. Now to find out when this was, we need to go back to 1970. On June the 1st, the Soyuz 9 mission was launched from a cosmodrome in southern Kazakhstan. Now of course this was a year after America had landed on the moon, and so the Russians were still trying to get their space program into full flight. Now 8 days later, on June the 9th, the two cosmonauts on the spacecraft teamed up to play a chess game against two players who were on Earth. Now on board the Soyuz 9 spacecraft were Andrian Nikolaev and Vitaly Shevastyanov, and they were playing against Viktor Gorbachev, who was also a cosmonaut on Earth, and General Nikolai Kamenin, who was responsible for the space training for the Soviet Union and was the head of cosmonauts from 1960 to 1971. Now, on the space, Shevastyanov, who he was with, was actually president of the Soviet Union Chess Federation from 1977 to 1986, also 1988 and 1989. And in 1985, he became a FIDE arbiter and received an honorary life membership in 1986. So you could say that the cosmonauts on the spacecraft had the slight edge when it came to their chess playing ability. Now you might wonder, well, how did they play the game in space? Did they bring up a chess set with them? Well, interestingly, the Soviet Union actually invented a special type of chessboard that could be played in space, because if you use a magnetic board, it would actually affect the instruments and could actually cause harm to the mission. So here is an example of a special chessboard which is in display in the Russian Museum of Chess Federation. Now the game itself was an interesting game that began as a Queen's Gambit accepted. Now the cosmonauts in space were playing with the white pieces, and moves were sent via radio when the spacecraft was passing over Moscow. Now as a result, that means the game lasted 6 hours from the orbits of 141 to orbit 144. So let's have a look at what the game entailed. Now the game itself lasted for 35 moves, which was, as we said, over 6 hours because of the way that the moves were being relayed over the radio. So it was a Queen's Gambit accepted. We had d4, d5, c4, d takes c4, e3, e takes e5, bishop takes c4, e takes d4, e takes d4, and then we had knight c6 and bishop to e3. So relatively in book. We had bishop to d6, knight to c3, knight to f6, knight to f3, castles, castles, bishop to g4, h3, and bishop to f5. Now this game was a pretty even game throughout. However, it really did balance on three specific moves in this game that could have seen a decisive advantage for either side. Now in the game here we get knight to h4, queen to d7, queen to f3, knight to e7, g4. So attacking the bishop, but of course opening up the king. You would have been interested to see the reasoning behind this. Maybe it was all that beautiful view of the earth that they decided to go such an aggressive move. We had bishop back to g6, then rook to a to e1, king to h8, then we had bishop to g5, knight to g8, knight to g2, rook to e8, and then we had bishop here to e3. Now bishop to e3 is in fact a blunder. It's a blunder because white can actually win a pawn here, which has obviously been hanging for a little while, but the combination to do it here and to get yourself into a good position is, instead of playing bishop back to e3, is to trade off the rooks here, then queen b7, knight to e4, bishop to b5, attacking the queen and the rook, of course, then offering a queen trade, and after the queen trades and the rook takes, here we see white is comfortably ahead. They have that extra pawn, and it's definitely an advantage to white. However, in the game that wasn't played. It was bishop to e3, and then black plays bishop to b4, attacking the knight. And after taking the knight, well, trading after the knight, the bishop for the knight, we get bishop to e2, attacking the queen, and then we get queen to g3. We get c6. So of course now this opportunity of winning this pawn is completely gone. So the game continues with f3, followed by bishop to d5, looking to trade off the light square bishops, but the cosmonauts decide to keep their bishops on the board. We get b5, and here b5 is a blunder by black again, because it gives a real opportunity for white to attack. So this is the second opportunity that the cosmonauts had to really force home the advantage, and unfortunately they didn't take it. They played queen to h4, but a better move in this position is pawn to g5, attacking the knight. And of course the knight is kind of stuck for places to go, because it can't go back here, can't go here, can't go here, can't go here, can't go here, because you'd lose it to the pawn. So really the only move for it is to go to h5. Now after h5 you could play queen to g4, and after trading off the queens and taking with the h pawn, now this knight is being attacked again, and its only square it can go to without being captured is g3. And after playing rook to f2 and f5, desperately trying to get some support for the knight, you played a nice little move of bishop to f4, and after pawn takes and bishop takes knight, pawn takes again, trading off the rooks on e8, and then you can play knight to e4, checking with the rook, but then you can bring back the light square bishop, and here white, or the cosmonauts, would find himself in a position roughly nearly 2.8, nearly +3 on the board, completely winning position here for white. But unfortunately it was missed in the game, and we had queen h4. After that we had g6, and g6 itself is also classified as a blunder, but we had knight to f4 in the game. Then looking again to trade off the light square bishops, what happened? We had bishop back to d2, and here again was another opportunity for the cosmonauts to push home their advantage, because here you could have played a nice move d5, and black here with a sequence of moves having to trade off the rook for the bishop. We get queen to d6, attacking the knight. Then we get g5, and after knight takes and pawn takes, we get rook to e1, combining up the rooks here on the e file. h6 is deemed the best computer move, and something like queen d4 check to the king, and after king h7 and trying to force a queen trade, black could of course take this pawn, but here you see white is winning the game. They're plus 0.1 because you can take this pawn here. Also this knight can't get out very easily. With this queen here as well, this rook has to stay home to try and avoid this pawn dropping. So again, another comfortable position for white, but again it was missed in the game with the move bishop to d2. And here we see the game just kind of peters out after rook's trades. We get knight to d5, g5 played in this position. Now the knights trade off, and with the game we're seeing these pawns are blocking up these pawns in the middle. We get bishop to f4, queen to d8, bishop to e5 check, f6 trading off the pawns, then knight goes to f6. We get a trade off of all of the pieces pretty much. We get rook exchange of the rooks, and in this position the game was agreed as a draw. So here was the very first chess game that was played in space